to Councillor David Simmons from the Local Government Association and Yasmine, who works with the Syrian community in the UK. Morning to you both. Yasmine, if I could just start with your reaction there, just to the latest words from our correspondent there at the train station saying 3,000 people just stuck there. Incredibly difficult in those circumstances.
And they're there because they have no other option. They've fled a war zone, at least speaking about the Syrians that are there. They fled a situation where people look to the skies expecting an airstrike at any time. They look to the skies expecting chemical weapons to be dropped on them. They're there because they have no other option. And we see these images. We saw the image of the little boy washed up on the Turkish shore. And people would not put themselves or their children at risk unless there was something very powerful that they were fleeing.
And what is the reaction of the Syrian community here in this country at the moment about the ongoing situation?
Well, we'd obviously like the government to take in more refugees, to step up to its responsibility and take in more refugees. But more importantly, I think we'd also like to see more concerted action on the international level to address the underlying root cause of the conflict in Syria. We've had a regime that's been massacring our people for the past 4 years. And until that stops, there's going to be more refugees. We want people to be safe in their homes. But if they're not, and obviously if the international community doesn't take action, then we want them to welcome more refugees.
We've been reporting this morning here on Breakfast that David Cameron is expected to announce today an increase in the number of refugees from Syria that he's prepared for the UK to take. Let's talk to David Simmons from the Local Government Association. If more refugees are coming to Britain, can the local councils, the local authorities, David, that you represent, cope?
Britain's councils have a well-established system for managing new arrivals into the UK. And Syria, unfortunately, has not been the first humanitarian crisis that we've faced. We recognise that moral responsibility for a long time. And councils in England have been accommodating around 2,000 unaccompanied refugee children every year. And we support more than 10,000 destitute families across the UK, in addition to those who've already come through the established system where they can seek asylum. So once we've got a clear idea from government of what the numbers are, we can gear up that system and make sure that the housing needs, the school places, if there are children involved, the NHS resources that are required, are put in place so that we can accommodate those people and hopefully have a reasonably smooth transition to life in the UK.
How are they going to be paid for? That's what a lot of people are going to be asking. I suppose that's what your members, your local councils are asking. You know, where is the money going to come from? Can you afford it at the moment?
Many parts of the UK are already under huge pressure, and one of the things we need to do to manage this properly is make sure the local communities understand that people are not being allowed to jump the queue or given unfair priority, that we have the resources in place so that in those parts of the country where there is already a lot of pressure on housing and on school places, that we're managing that process effectively. So those areas of the UK that perhaps have additional resources where there are opportunities can play a big part. And we make sure that we've got the organisation at a national level that is geared up to ensure that that process is managed in a way that local communities can see as fair.
Well, we've heard lots of councils over the last few years talking about cuts and running out of cash. There'll be people watching this morning who say, if my services are already being cut and if this is the beginning of a new wave of migrants and refugees coming into Britain, is this potentially an economic, financial issue for local authorities?
I've been in discussion with government for some time about making sure that the burden doesn't fall unfairly on a small number of places. A good example is that unaccompanied children are the responsibility at the council where they arrive in the UK, which means a small number of local authorities that are perhaps airport hosts or have channel ports in their area are bearing the burden for a very large number of children that we are supporting. So by having an effective national system and making sure that's geared up, we can ensure that that burden is spread fairly. And we do know that most local communities are very welcoming. They're very positive about immigrants and asylum seekers who come into their community once they're settled in. But in order to make sure that that process is smooth and that that welcome is absolutely as we'd expect it to be as a country that's got a proud history of supporting refugees and people in need, we need to ensure that the resources are there and that there is a very clear public commitment to ensure that those burdens are spread fairly.
David, thank you very much for that, Yasmine. I just want to give you a little bit of time here because we're expecting David Cameron today to offer to take more refugees that are in official United Nations camps at the moment. What are the circumstances for the thousands, many thousands of people who've already made the journey and are perhaps halfway through that journey or are stranded somewhere in mainland Europe?
Well, I think that this is a problem that European countries are going to have to come and work collectively to address. They are our responsibility. We cannot turn our face away from their plight. And we will have to accept some of them. We will have to work with other European countries to, at the end of the day, these people are victims. We're talking about people who are seeking asylum from, war, from death. So we will have to share our responsibility and see what we can do to help them.
OK. Thank you both very much indeed for discussing this with us this morning. Thanks.
It is just coming up to 16 minutes past 8. Carol has this morning's weather for us. Morning, Carol.
Good morning, both. Good